everyone, my name is Hailey Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to a little bit of whatever I want: conspiracy theories, controversial people, true crime, vlogs, and all things spooky, scary, skeleton. So if you're into any of that, you can subscribe, and if not, totally fine. Like, let's just vibe, grab some snacks, grab a drink, do what you gotta do. No pressure, no pressure. If you just want to vibe and go, vibe and go. And so for today's video, we're gonna be talking about the biggest heists in history, heists that I thought were very, very interesting, heists that have to do with bank robberies, jewelry thieves. Before getting into the rest of today's video, I do want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, BABBEL. If you guys don't know what BABBEL is your new language learning best friend that can teach you so many different languages. They have Spanish, German, French, Danish. Lessons are only like 10 minutes long and help you learning it in just 3 weeks. Some of you guys may know I love French music. I love listening to French music, and although I don't know what they're saying, I just think it's so pretty. So that is when I started using BABBEL to kind of get better at my French skills, like je m'appelle Hailey. Bonsoir, merci. I'm learning, okay? That's the point of BABBEL. The language is taught by real language teachers, so you know exactly what you're learning is something that you would genuinely use in real life. Not like some language learning apps or websites where they kind of just teach you how to speak like a Siri robot, or just teach you something that you could easily look up on Google Translate. This is the more conversational way, so when you go to that country of origin, you won't be, you know, an obvious tourist. BABBEL is helpful to anyone, no matter what your learning preferences. They have podcasts if you're more of an auditory learner, fun games if you're more of a hands-on. BABBEL also offers a 20-day money-back guarantee, so there's literally no risk in just trying it out. The leaves are changing, school is back in session, and it is the perfect time to start getting to learn a new language. Whether you're studying abroad, dreaming of future travel, or just have the itch to learn something new, now is the right time to start cozying up and learn something new with BABBEL. And BABBEL is currently giving every single one of you guys watching this video a 60% off your BABBEL subscription, which I think is a really good deal, simply just by clicking the link down below. And again, thank you so much to BABBEL for sponsoring today's video, and make sure to click the link down below to get 60% off your purchase. The very first story that we're going to be talking about is the Colorpop bank robbery of 2003. On August 28th of 2003, a phone call was made to a pizzeria in Pennsylvania by the name of Mamma Mia's Pizzeria. At this pizzeria, the owner of the pizzeria, named Tony, he picked up the phone and started to take an order for 2 large pepperoni and sausage pizzas, and they wanted it for delivery. And so as Tony was trying to figure out the address, he said that he couldn't really understand the other person on the line, so he handed off the phone to his employee, Brian Wells. Brian Wells picks up the phone and he figures out that the address is actually 8631 Peach Street, which is only about 13 minutes away from the pizzeria. So Brian, although he was about to end his shift soon, Brian said, oh, you know what, I'm gonna go down there. It's only gonna take me a couple minutes. I'll do this one and then I'll go home. And so he takes the pizzas and he goes to make his delivery. About 2 hours go by and Brian is still not back at the pizzeria. Brian is on the news, handcuffed and surrounded by state troopers with a bomb strapped to his neck while he sits in the middle of a parking lot, telling the police that he is a pizza delivery man and he went to go drop off pizzas, and there was a group of men that approached him and strapped a bomb to his neck and said that if he doesn't collect $250,000 from the PNC Bank, then the bomb will go off and he will die. He was also given 8 pages of instructions that he was trying to give the police, but since the police didn't know if the bomb attached to Brian was a real or fake one, they did not want to get close to Brian for their own safety, so instead they basically just all sat around. Police officers, medic was on standby, just basically waiting around for the bomb experts to come by and try to disarm the bomb. Bomb squad was taking their little old time to get there because about 30 minutes into Brian sitting there just having this conversation with the police, as the police stood very far away from him, Brian yelled out, quote, Why is nobody trying to come and take this thing off of me? I don't have much time. It's gonna go off. I'm not lying. Did you call my boss? And then at around 3:18 p.m., that is when the police notice that the BALM around Brian's neck starts to make a very loud beeping noise, and that is when the bomb goes off. The bomb goes off and Brian falls backwards, and while all of the police and medic teams are on standby, they're just simply looking at Brian in shock as to what they just saw. And then 2 minutes after the bomb went off, that is when the bomb squad had arrived. And so what happened between that time of Brian leaving the pizzeria to drop off the pizzas from the time of the parking lot is what remains the most mysterious. Before getting into the theories as to who people believed this person was, there are a couple of key things to note about the situation. The address given to drop off the pizzas was not actually a house, but instead a cell phone tower, and the only way to reach that location is through a dirt road. So when the police went back to the location to check it out, they indeed did see Brian's tire tracks as well as Brian's footprints in the dirt road, proving that Brian was indeed there. Another thing to note is that when they were doing an autopsy on Brian's body, they noticed that the bomb that was used was a very hard bomb to get your hands on. Town of Erie, Pennsylvania. They said that these type of collar bombs are typically the type of bombs that you would see in a Colombian drug cartel. Another key thing to note is the 8 pages of instructions that Brian was found with. So instead of going in and reading word for word every single page, I'm just going to go through every page and give you the main idea or the main things that you will need to know in order to understand what I'm going to talk about later. Page 1 just goes over the rules of the heist, such as him needing to go 60 miles per hour throughout the course. You can't unlock the bomb without a key or combination, and that key and combination will be given to you as the instructions follow, sort of like a scavenger hunt. Page 2 instructs Brian to go to a certain location, and then at this location he needs to pick up orange tape as well as a black garbage bag in order to complete the robbery. On page 3, this page in particular was a page that he was supposed to give to the police, which basically says, give us the money and comply with us, or else they will set off the bomb by like a mobile phone or some sort of device that they have on their end, and the bomb will go off, and not only will the bomb hostage die, but others around him will also die as well. They also go on to say that don't even think about disarming the bomb yourself, because there are around 10 tripwires and 3 timers, so even if you are simply trying to mess with the bomb, it will indeed go off. On page 4, it says that if you are successful in giving us all of the money and following through with the entire scavenger hunt, then the bomb will indeed be disarmed and everyone will go home alive. But there is a failure option that basically says that if he does not comply, or if the police get involved, then the bomb hostage will die and the bomb will go off. Also request that there is no press or live filming going on of the event. They said that if there is live filming or lots of press, then the bomb will go off, because they don't want anyone to steal their method. And then at the end of this page, they also say that they know who the police force is, as well as where all of them live and their families, so be very careful. And if the bomb hostage is in the bank for more than 20 minutes, then the bomb will go off, because they are on a time crunch. Page 5, now this is a page that is meant to go to the bank teller, the person who is handling all of the money, to which it basically says, give us $250,000 now or the bomb will go off. You have 15 minutes, so be quick. Page 6 is a page that is supposed to be given to the receptionist, which basically says, call the bank manager and give him the following demands, and that they need a code to open up the vault. Once the vault is open, give them $250,000, and if they don't have that, then they would settle for only $150,000. But no police and no panic button, or else the bomb will go off. Pages 7 and 8 sort of have to do with the same idea, or basically just reiterating ideas that we already heard earlier. Brian's instructions is that he has to go to PNC Bank, get $250,000 $8,000, collect the money, put it in the garbage bag, and then go to the McDonald's drive-through sign that was close by, and there at the sign he will find 2 more pages of instructions that will lead him to the keys that will disarm the bomb. The bomb will go off in 55 minutes, so that leaves you 25 minutes of travel time, 20 minutes in the bank, and less than 10 minutes of safety time. So like a little bit of like leeway room. And those are just the key points to remember and what was supposed to happen, but what actually happened was quite the opposite. So the phone call made to Mamma Mia's Pizzeria was made at 1:47 p.m. and Brian decided to take this call for him. And as I said, the home was not even a home, it was just a cell phone tower site, so it wasn't even a real house. At 2:20 p.m. that is when Brian arrived at PNC Bank with a bomb attached to his neck and a white shirt that said "Guess" across the chest, a shirt that he was not wearing before. A witness at the bank named John Seckel, he said that during this whole entire altercation, Brian seemed very, very calm. Also said that when Brian walked in with a shotgun disguised as a cane and what looked to be a shoebox underneath his shirt. When Brian walked in there, he didn't walk in creating a scene or anything. He didn't walk in yelling. When the receptionist was given her page 6, she read it, and that is when she yelled out the name Audrey. Now, Audrey was actually a code word used at the bank to tell the people in the back that there was a bank robbery going on. Because of this, they were able to whisper about what was going on, and a bank teller was able to tell one customer, and that one customer told all the customers that there was a robbery going on and they needed to leave. And so the receptionist did indeed try to call the bank manager, but they weren't able to get in touch with him, and so they said that since they don't have access to the vault, they were only able to get $8,702 out. So Brian basically just took this money and went with it. Although it wasn't $250,000 or $150,000, he just really wanted to get out of there. There's actually a witness that says that Brian walked out of the bank with a dum-dum sucker in his mouth that he had gotten from the front desk. Again, just very nonchalantly and very calm. After he collected the money, as part of his instructions, he was supposed to leave his driver's license with the receptionist and tell them that he was going to be back soon. And so he did so, and then after that he went to the McDonald's sign where he was able to pick up 2 more pieces of instructions. On this instructions, it basically told him to go to a specific part in the woods and there he should find the key to the bomb. But on his way from the McDonald's to the woods, he was actually caught by police. That is when he was handcuffed, put in the middle of the Eyeglass World parking lot, and that is where the police started to, keep their distance, trying to talk to him, and awaited for the bomb squad. After Brian had passed away, the police actually tried to finish out the scavenger hunt and continue on the instructions that were on the pieces of papers. They said that it took them all day to do this back and forth scavenger hunt until at one point in the scavenger hunt, they went to the location that it said on the paper, but there was nothing there, as if the people had noticed that the police were starting to do the hunt, and in fear of this hunt linking it back to this group, they just immediately got rid of all of the following evidence, leading the police to a dead end. And so even to this day, no one knows for sure who exactly the people behind this was. They don't know what had happened. This is where the theories come in as to what exactly happened. Theory number 1 has to do with a man by the name of William A. Rothstein. William was a hoarder. He was 6 foot. He spoke multiple languages, and he was a high school shop teacher. So basically he did like the mechanicals, the woodworking, all of that stuff. A month after the incident, a random call was made into the police station that said, quote, "At 8645 Peach Street, in the garage, there is a frozen body. It's in the freezer." And that address just so happened to be William's home. When the police searched the freezer and found the body, the police asked William whose body this was, and he said that he was, quote, "holding it for a friend," which has to be the most wild answer ever if you're a police officer and you find a body in someone's home and then they're like, "Hey, what is this?" And you're like, "Oh, that's that's not mine. That's my friend's. It's my friend's body. It's not mine. He said that he was holding it for his friend by the name of Marjorie Deal Armstrong, and the body in the freezer was identified as James Roden, Marjorie's boyfriend. The police arrested both Marjorie and William and put them in for questioning, and they were able to gather the info that at one point Marjorie and William were actually engaged twice. William said that he was feeling super guilty about the whole situation. He didn't want to hold the body for Marjorie, but he felt like he did, and he felt so guilty about it to the point where he even contemplated suicide. So when the police went into his house and they were snooping around trying to find more evidence, they actually did find William's suicide note in the desk drawer of his home. But an odd thing about this suicide note is that in the very first line, it said, quote, "This has nothing to do with the Wells case," referring to Brian Wells of the BALM incident, which was very odd for police because they're like, why would we even make that connection? Why would we associate your attempted suicide to a bank robbery gone wrong situation? That those two worlds have nothing to do with each other, but now that you bring that up, well, now we're going to consider it. So they started looking into connections that Brian and William had, but the only connection that they could really find is that the cell phone tower that Brian had dropped off the pizzas at was only a 5-minute walk from William's house. And when they traced back the phone call that was made to Mamma Mia's Pizzeria, they traced it back to a payphone at a Shell gas station that was ironically only half a mile away from William's house. When they spoke to the owner of the gas station to see if they could get any witness statements, the owner of the gas station said that they did know of William. He went in there very frequently, and they even said, quote, "He'd come in to buy newspapers and cookies. He'd sit outside in his car and have brunch, read the paper." He also said that although he can't remember if he saw William that day use the payphone, but he does know for a fact that William does use that payphone every once in a while. So as they were investigating William's home further, they also found that there were a lot of power tools and machinery at William's house. To this, William just said like, "Oh, well, I'm a high school shop teacher. It's what I do. I have to have that many tools." But ironically, the police pointed out that the tools that he had in the house seem to be the same sort of tools that you would need to create the bomb that was found on Brian's neck. Many years later, this is just a side note, but in 2007, it was confirmed that Rothstein had dumped 1,000 pounds of evidence in a landfill that people suspect was to be the debris from making the bomb that killed Brian. Although a lot of people do suspect William, a lot of people also say that William wasn't smart enough to do something like this. It just doesn't seem like something he would be able to execute, which kind of ouch, right? Like if someone was like, "Oh, this is definitely not something you would do because clearly you're not smart enough for that." So that would just be silly to like suspect you. I don't know, like I don't want to be a suspect, but like this kind of leads me into our second theory of Marjorie. So Marjorie had killed her boyfriend and put him in William's freezer. So because of this, Marjorie was obviously arrested, but she was also questioned about the bomb incident in particular. They searched Marjorie's home, and police said that when they walked into the home, it was an absolute mess. There was dog feces, clothes, and fast food bags all over the house, and it was so terrible to the point where the officers that were investigating her house needed to wear hazmat suits in order to search it properly. So when looking into Marjorie's criminal history, they actually noted that this wasn't the first time that Marjorie had killed a significant other. another. They found that in 1984, she had shot her boyfriend Robert Thomas, but was given absolutely no jail time for this crime because she had said it was in self-defense. She has had only 2 husbands in her life, and her first husband had passed away due to hanging himself, while her second husband passed away due to hitting his head on a coffee table. Right off the bat, very, very suspicious, but I mean, I wasn't there. People who grew up with Marjorie explain Marjorie to be very cocky and smart-ish. They said that she was the type of person that would make a simple thing very, very complicated just to make herself look smarter than what she actually was. Like if she was explaining a topic about something, she would explain every single detail so it looked like she knew more about the subject than what she did. And some would even go on to say that she even sounds like the type of person that would plan a bank heist and make it unreasonably complicated for no reason. Marjorie was said to be very cocky. She does seem like the type of person that would have to keep on reiterating her credentials throughout the entire time, such as you can find multiple times in the documents where they say that they have 7+ years of jail experience, they've perfected this plan over years, the bomb has all these tripwires, so don't even try to waste your time trying to defuse it. In this note, a lot of people point out that they're always using the words of we, inferring that there is a group of people involved. So a lot of people speculate that possibly William and Marjorie were together on this operation. Then other people say that there's literally no way that these 2 people could have done this thought out of a plan just with 2 people. There has to be an outsider, and that leads me into my third suspect, and that is a man by the name of Kenneth Barnes. In 2005, a witness came to the police saying that there was a man involved in the bomb collar incident, and his name was Kenneth Barnes. Kenneth was a former repairman that soon became a drug dealer / hitman and was arrested multiple times for his crimes. In 2007, a sex worker by the name of Jessica Hoopsick actually came to the police saying that she used to, quote, turn tricks with Brian Wells in Kenneth Barnes' home, linking Kenneth and Brian together, which is very odd. And it was also very odd because at this point in the investigation, they never said publicly that Kenneth was a suspect. So the fact that Kenneth's name is being brought up for a second time is very, very suspicious. She also said that she knew of a lady that was always around them and was always talking to them, and she actually went fishing with her a couple of times, and this woman was by the name of Marjorie Deal Armstrong. She also noted that there would be a lot of times where Kenneth would create these like very odd conversation starters where he would randomly just bring up the question of, if you were to rob a bank, how would you do it? And then a month later, after he started like talking about that, that is when the bomb incident had occurred with Brian Wells. And then shortly after the bomb incident, Kenneth was actually arrested due to unrelated drug charges, but he was currently still in jail. The police were able to track him quite easily and ask him some questions. There was also another witness that came forward and said that they spotted Kenneth and Marjorie going the wrong way on a highway the same exact day of the bomb collar incident. When Kenneth was later questioned about all of this, he said that the only way he would confess or spill all the information that he knew is if he was promised a lesser sentence, to which the police said, yes, we will give you a lesser sentence if you give us the answers we're seeking for. So that is when Kenneth started to spill on everything that he knew. He said that Marjorie Deal Armstrong was indeed involved, and he said that the reason Marjorie needed the money was because, as I said, Kenneth was a hitman. Marjorie needed money to pay Kenneth in order for Kenneth to kill her father. Marjorie is currently in prison for the murder of her boyfriend that she had put into William's freezer. So similar to Kenneth, she was already in prison and very easy to track down and question. And so Marjorie was questioned by police, but at first she didn't really speak anything. She basically just just kind of sat there, refused to speak about the incident. And so that is when they went to Marjorie's cellmates, to which Marjorie's cellmates said that there was one specific time where Marjorie said that the only reason that she killed her boyfriend was because he found out about her bomb collar plan and was threatening to go to the police with that information. And so when Marjorie was questioned again, the police asked her again, like, can you please just tell us everything that you know? That is when Marjorie decided to come up with a deal, and she said that the only way I will confess or even tell you anything is if I'm transferred to Cambridge Spring Penitentiary, which is not a nicer prison because there's no such thing as a nice prison, but it is a little bit nicer of a prison than she was in currently. So the police agreed and transferred her over to Cambridge. Police noted that Marjorie's house was actually within a mile of the bank robbery. Marjorie told police that on the day of the bank robbery, she was actually driving around two men by the names of William Rothstein and Kenneth Barnes. She went in a squad car with the police officer, and she showed the police officer exactly where they were all day that day. And ironically, it was in the same areas as to where when they were doing the whole scavenger hunt and the papers said like, oh, go to this location, go to that location. Marjorie was taking them to the areas where it said to go on the instructions. There would be no way for Marjorie to know about these areas and the importance of these areas if she was not involved in the crime at all. She also took them to a Shell gas station and said that she had actually stopped at this Shell gas station to get a bit of gas while William got out the car and used the payphone, which around this time it was speculated that this was the phone call that was made to Mamma Mia's Pizzeria. And then Marjorie then goes, that's all I'll say on that. If you want to hear more information about what's going on, I'm going to need to be guaranteed immunity, as in guaranteed no jail time for her crime. And the police are looking at her like, did you just not hear yourself for the past hour? You just confessed to being an accomplice. We have enough evidence at this point to arrest you for this crime. And so Marjorie is like, oh, now that is embarrassing. Now that is embarrassing, and I really need to keep my mouth shut but Marjorie then continues, and she then says that Brian Wells was actually in on the operation, and he wasn't just a victim. And so that leads me into our fourth and final suspect, Brian Wells. At first, the police weren't really suspecting Brian, but there were a couple of odd factors that made the police think twice about what if Brian was in on the operation. One of those things is that during the whole bank robbery, Brian remained very, very calm throughout all of it. He kept his composure. He even walked out with a sucker. There was also one point where Brian was laying on the parking lot floor and he was yelling for the police to take off the bomb. And when he was explaining himself, he even said that when he went to the location, a quote, group of black men put this bomb collar on him and gave him these 8 pages of instruction. But there was absolutely no evidence to back up Brian's claim in that a group of black men had done this to him, which a very odd description in my opinion. What really made people start to believe, and even to this day make people believe, that Brian was in on the operation, in 2007 there was a district attorney that was on the case that said that she believes Brian, William, Marjorie, and Kenneth were all in on it. She speculated that Marjorie and Kenneth had planned on taking the money and running away from William and Brian. She also speculates that Brian was a part of it due to how long this scavenger hunt was. As I said, it took the police an entire day to go through this scavenger hunt, so it would be quite impossible for anyone to do that in a span of 55 minutes. So either Brian was in on it or he was just doomed from the start. And if Brian was in on it, you may be thinking, well, if Brian was in on it, why would he voluntarily strap a bomb to his neck? There are a couple of theories, one of them being that possibly the posse, whoever was involved, involved had put this bomb on Brian's neck as a way to ensure that Brian wasn't just going to run off with the money, that he was actually going to bring the money back, and if he did try to run away with the money, then the bomb would go off and he would die. Kenneth Barnes would also say during his questioning that there were multiple times where Brian Wells had came over to his house and had talked about this bomb collar plan a month before it happened. But in a massive turn of events, in 2007, officers came forward and said that the collar bomb investigation was closed because they were charging Marjorie and Kenneth for being the ringleaders of the whole operation. And after a total of 1,000 interviews, Brian was also charged for being a part of this crime as well. A lot of people believe that Brian was indeed on the plan, but he wasn't in on the plan in a malicious way, but he was under the impression that the bomb was actually fake. And that's why when he was going around being super calm and acting very nonchalant, he walked out of the bank with a sucker in his mouth. As far as the aftermath of all of this and why people to this day still consider this case as a cold case, or why people think that it wasn't indeed just Kenneth and Marjorie. A lot of people also think that Brian had nothing to do with it in the first place, including Brian's family. At the hearing when they were charging Brian, Brian's sister was there, and the whole entire time she kept on yelling to the court, "Liar." Marjorie, due to this, was also sentenced to life to 30 years, and she said before her sentencing that she didn't know who Brian Wells was before he came on the news, and that the killer was still out there. In 2017, on April 4th, Marjorie did pass away due to natural causes in prison. William Rothstein did actually pass away in 2004, again due to natural causes. As far as Kenneth was also charged with conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery and was going to 45 years, but that 45 years was brought down to 20 due to all of the ratting out and snitching that he did whilst he was in prison. And Kenneth is supposed to be released from prison if everything goes as planned in the year 2027. Although people have been charged with this crime, there are a lot of people that speculate that is not at all what happened. They feel like the police just kind of closed up the investigation because they didn't want to keep on searching for him anymore. And over the years, this case has definitely not diminished in the way that it is talked about. There was actually a whole Netflix series called Evil Genius, which I highly recommend checking out if you want to hear all of the very specific details about the case. As for my own personal thoughts, I don't think Brian was involved. I personally feel like Brian was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Possibly Brian was acting very nonchalantly was because it's more of as long as I get through this, I need to act now and think later. My life is on the line. I just need to do this and do it as quickly as possible. But that was indeed the bomb collar incident. Let me know in the comments below what you personally feel like. If you yourself, go and do your own research and you find something that I did not mention in this video, make sure to leave that in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think Brian was involved, not involved? But now we are going to be moving on to our second heist group, and those people are referred to as the Pink Panthers. The Pink Panthers is basically a group of jewel thieves that are speculated to be comprised of around 800 people. Many of these people are ex-military or law enforcement officers. Even to this day, as of 2022, the Pink Panthers are still out there and still stealing from jewelry stores. But the way that they conduct their robberies literally looks, because there are lots of surveillance footage online, is something out of a James Bond action movie. As of 2019, it was said that this group had stolen up to $1 billion worth of jewelry across 35 different countries and never once got caught for the ringleader of this operation. Who is behind all of this and who is greenlighting all of these is a complete mystery up to this day. And so before getting into any of that, let me explain their origins and how they even came to be a popular heist group. Their very first first heist was actually presented back in 2001. It was in a jewelry store in France. Prior to the heist, considering that it was premeditated, the group had actually painted the front benches that were in front of the jewelry store to prevent anyone from sitting down in front of the jewelry store so that they wouldn't get any close-up witnesses, and they could literally wait for a time in the jewelry store where no one was in there and perform their crime. And then in 2002, the group stole what was called the Millennium Necklace from the Nevada casino in Las Vegas, and this necklace was worth $1 million. Even to this day, no one knows where this jewelry is. In 2003, they struck again and stole $14 million worth of jewels from a shop in Chopard, Paris. That same exact year, in May of 2003, this was the very first time that one of the members of the Pink Panthers was actually caught. There was a jewelry store in London by the name of Graf. There was a man by the name of Nebosha Denik. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And it was said by witnesses of the jewelry store that day that he came in a very expensive suit, a cane, and what looked to be an Elvis sort of wig. But when they saw him, they didn't really see him as very suspicious. They just thought that either he was a very mentally ill and wealthy man, or maybe that was just his style. He was specifically looking at a 12-carat ring that was worth 500,000 pounds. That is when he tells the teller that this ring in particular was a little bit too fancy for him, and if she had anything a little bit smaller. So as she went to go to the back to get something smaller, that is when he randomly pulls out a chrome-plated .357 Magnum gun and yelled at everyone to get down on the floor. Simultaneously, a man who was also in the jewelry store pulled out a hammer and started smashing all of the display cases while collecting as much of the jewelry as he could. He was able to collect 47 pieces of diamond jewelry worth around 23 million pounds, and both of the men ran out. A security guard by the name of Simon Stearman was able to chase down the two guys, but only caught one of them, and that was Denek, the guy that was in the crazy wig. And so through this one guy, Denek, they were able to get a little bit of information, and they were able to track down the getaway driver of the thieves by the name of Milan Jovertic. Officers then knew that Milan was based in London, so they went to his apartment to take a peek around, and this was an apartment that he shared with his girlfriend Anna. As the police were searching around the apartment, they were able to come across 2 fake Italian passports with absolutely no photos or name, and then as they were investigating the scene further, they noticed in the bathroom Anna actually had a face cream, and inside of the face cream was a bright blue diamond ring worth around $750,000, and this was ironically a stolen ring. This is where the group really got their name as the Pink Panthers, because there's this 1975 movie called The Return of the Pink Panther, where in that movie they had used a very similar hiding spot. Although they were only able to find one of the missing rings, they were still not able to uncover the other 22 million pounds worth of jewelry, to which even to this day no one knows where it's at. After questioning Anna and Milan, they were able to get a name of the second accomplice in this situation, the guy that hit the display cases with the hammer, and his name was Predrag Vysocevic. Again, don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And the police were able to track down his apartment to one in Paris, but when the detective flew from London all the way to Paris in order to track him down, they showed up to his apartment and realized that Predrag was gone. While in Paris, that is when the detective had met with Paris detectives trying to get more information on Predrag, where he may have gone, and that is when authorities tell the detective that this is not the first time that Predrag has been accused of being a jewel thief. He has actually been suspected of robbing jewelry stores, specifically Graf stores, in Amsterdam, Paris, Frankfurt, Geneva, and Barcelona. In 2005, a whole 2 years later, that is when Padrag was actually caught and arrested while trying to go from Italy to France via car, but when he was crossing that border, they checked his car, and that's when they found a loaded gun in the back seat. In 2005, 2 years later, that same detective went back to Paris in order to question Padrag about the Pink Panthers. When questioned, Padrag said that he would answer questions about anything except for the London robbery. Padrag was later sentenced to 9 years in prison, but even to this day, all 22 million pounds worth of that jewelry is still uncovered. In March of 2004, 2 people in wigs stole from the Comatose Vedome necklace. It was a very expensive necklace from a jewelry store in Tokyo, and this necklace was a 125 carat diamond necklace worth $31 million. It was said that with this specific incident, one of the men walked in with brown leather gloves and a bag with a Cartier logo on it, and the others were dressed in dark clothes. From security footage, one of the men gets a piece of paper out of a bag as if he wants to write something down for the salesperson, and as the employee bends over to read what is on the paper, the man pepper sprays him in the face as the other person breaks the glass with a hammer, grabs the necklace as well as some other diamonds, and the 2 thieves run out of the store and flee on their motorcycles. But what was very crazy about that whole incident is that the whole ordeal took only 40 seconds. So everything was very quick, very planned. The people who were involved knew exactly what they were doing. They were able to get $31 million worth of jewelry in a span of 40 seconds, to which even to this day, no one knows where that jewelry is. In 2005, in Saint-Tropez, France, a group of people who was suspected to be the Pink Panthers robs the Harry Winston boutique in Paris with, this time, guns. They were later successful in robbing this place, but then a year later, they returned to the same exact place and did the same exact crime and were once again successful. But this time around, last time there was 2 men, and then this year in 2008, it was the 2 men, but they were dressed as women. And they were able to escape with 71 pounds worth of jewelry. And I don't mean like the currency pounds, I mean like physical weight pounds worth of jewelry. Also in 2007, the Pink Panthers had robbed another jewelry store in the Wafi Mall in Dubai. Now at this point, the Pink Panthers has definitely got their swing of things. They definitely know their routine by now, and it's a very famous routine that is even known today as grab and go, where there'll usually be 2 to 3 people. One of them will be the distraction, while the other 2 or the other person brings out a hammer and starts destroying all of the display cases, taking as much jewelry as they can in as little of time as they can before leaving in a getaway car. And so they would either do that, their grab and go method, or they would do another method by the name of volu ballet. I'm so sorry. They would smash a car into the window of the building to ensure an easy exit and entrance, and also creating as much commotion as they can to keep people as distracted as they can for as long as they can. And this is exactly what they did at the Wafi Mall. Not only is there video footage of this occurrence, but the people who are driving the cars actually reversed their cars into the window to prevent the airbags from going off due to front end collision. From that whole occurrence, they were able to get $3.4 million worth of jewelry, as well as getting away in a getaway car before the police had showed up. With their method being very quick and ambushed, it's very hard to complete a crime like that without a single trace. Because they left in a getaway driver and literally just left the 2 cars in the window, they were able to obtain DNA from both of the cars stores DNA that matched to the same DNA that was found in a recent jewelry heist in Liechtenstein, as well as another heist in Switzerland. Also found that these cars were actually rented, and when they went to the renting company, they found the phone number that they used to rent these cars with, and then after that, they were able to easily track down 8 more Pink Panther members just purely because someone decided to use their personal phone number to rent these cars. In October of 2008, 2 men drive up to a jewelry store in 2 black Audis, and this was a jewelry store that was previously robbed by the Pink Panthers back in 2007, so you can really start to see how the Pink Panthers now are just starting to re-rob the places that they've already hit in the past. But as the men were walking up to the jewelry store in order to rob it, they were actually both hit by a very fast moving car and were both sent to the hospital. In the hospital, the 2 men were identified as Dusko Poznan and Borko Ilinkik, and they were indeed a part of the Pink Panthers. And in that same year of 2008, the Pink Panthers actually pulled off a heist that no one really suspected, and it was not jewelry, but it was art. And they stole a Monet, a Van Gogh, a Dogen, and a Sassion worth altogether $143 million. And they stole all of that from a gallery in Zurich, Switzerland. Remember the very first heist that I wanted to detail with? It was at the Graf store in London. So in 2009, they actually hit that same exact Graf store again, be successful in doing so, to where they were able to steal 43 pieces of jewelry, all worth around 40 million pounds. I think it's very important to mention that every time a member of the Pink Panthers were arrested, obviously it would take the police a lot to try to get them to spill some sort of information, but whenever they were questioned about the other members in the group, they all said that they had no clue of the other people in the group. They said that one day they were just recruited, and then from there no one knows anyone. You literally just get your missions through a piece of paper, and then from there they were given a location to meet at, and then once they actually went to that location, they did not speak with anyone. They didn't know each other's names, not even code names. They didn't know the leader of the organization. All they knew was that if they completed the job and brought the jewelry back to the designated location, they would have to speak with 10 other people before finally getting paid for their services. Said that it was basically a big group based upon mystery. No one knew anyone. They were basically just all there to get paid and do what they're told. But there are a couple of instances that do suggest otherwise, and as if they did indeed know each other. In July of 2013, there was a man by the name of Milan Poporek, and he was serving a 6-year sentence in Switzerland for a jewelry heist that he had completed back in 2009. In this 2009 heist, it was suspected that he was a part of the Pink Panthers, until one day they were having their outside time. All of a sudden, a van had rammed through the gates of the outside, and a bunch of men came out of the van with AK-47s and started to open fire, while Milan and another prisoner got ladders provided by the people in the van, hopped over the fence with the ladder, and all of them were able to get into a getaway car, even the people that came out of the truck. Before leaving, they set fire to the van that crashed into the gate fence. All of them got into the getaway car, and even to this day, Milan was never ever recaptured. And this happened back in 2013. So that man is most definitely still alive. He's definitely somewhere out there. He could be anyone. You're at the grocery store tomorrow, there's a guy behind you, it could be him. Who literally knows? He's still out there. In 2016, it is believed that the Pink Panthers had stole $5.6 million worth of jewelry, as well as a 20-carat diamond ring from no other than Miss Kim Kardashian. I don't know if you guys remember back from 2016 when Kim Kardashian, one of the things that they stole was her 20-carat ring that Kanye had given her, and this was actually believed to be the work of the Pink Panthers. And Kim Kardashian has come out a lot over the years about her very traumatizing experience and encounter with the Pink Panthers, but despite their long list of crimes and the amount of people that have been arrested on suspicion of being a part of the Pink Panthers, this group, even to this day, still remains a big mystery. No one knows who even started this group. No one knows if it's a real group. No one knows if they're actually part of the Pink Panthers or if it's just a copycat of what the Pink Panthers are known for. But a detective from Belgium on the case was actually speculating who these people exactly could be, not by identity, but just by speculation and what he can gather. He believes that the Pink Panthers are comprised of 20 to 30 experienced thieves who are running the entire operation, and they have dozens and dozens of foot soldiers located all across Europe. From the years of 2002 to 2010, they had robbed and successfully robbed over 152 different jewelry stores with presumably the same exact strategy, a grab and go. You create a distraction, you grab as much stuff as you can within the span of under a minute, and then you leave in a getaway car, and that's it. There was actually this one heist in Italy that took place where their getaway car was actually a speedboat. There was another instance where their getaway vehicle was a helicopter. Like, as I said, James Bond sort of stuff. And these people, it's not like they killed anyone in the process. That was a main thing of theirs. Even to this day, although all of the crimes that they have committed, they have never killed anyone due to their crimes. There were even instances where the police station or the police officers were simply just 2 to 3 minutes away, and the Pink Panthers were able to escape before the police even got there. The detective from Belgium also said that he suspects the group to be based out of Serbia specifically. Every time they have spoken to people who have said that they were a part of the Pink Panthers, have always said that they believe that there really is no leader of the operation. A bunch of experienced thieves that are handing off the blueprint to people that will do the heist for them. And this kind of reminded me of the show Money Heist. You guys have ever seen Money Heist? There is the main guy, the professor, and he is an experienced thief, and instead of executing the plan himself, he then gets a bunch of experienced criminals to do the job for him. Also, while we're talking about crazy things that I found, remember the guy I was saying that like one of their very first heists that they ever did, they painted the benches that sat outside of the jewelry store so nobody would sit down and get like a first person view of the robbery going on inside. The person that painted the bench actually got arrested, and his name was Dragon, which probably the hardest name I've ever heard in my life. He was caught and arrested the very next day robbing a jewelry store, but he was able to successfully escape from prison. At first, he was trying to escape from prison by simply just running away, but that didn't really work, and so he was sent to a more secure prison, and it was at this more secure prison where he had successfully escaped. Randomly, one day during their outside time, and while Dragon was outside, a ladder and wire cutters was thrown over the big fence, and a guy actually came over as well with an AK-47 and started to open fire at anyone in the courtyard, as well as the officers that stood in like those towers that sit on top of prison fences. So through that, Dragon was able to make a very quick escape. He climbed up the ladder with his wire cutters, cut down all the barbed wire, went over the fence, as well as the two guys with the AKs. They ran, got in a getaway car, and again, even to this day, he was never recaptured. So he is still out there, out and about, could be literally anyone. And that is truly what makes the Pink Panthers such a big mystery, is because, as I said, there's been so many times where people have said that, you know, us as the Pink Panthers, we don't know anyone, we don't know anyone's names, there's not even code names. But then things like this will happen that will imply that, yes, they do know each other and they are aware aware to some extent the other's credentials. It just makes you wonder, like, what if the police had captured the leader of the Pink Panthers and they didn't even know, and that's why he needed to escape from prison? Or what if they were just speaking to one of the Pink Panthers higher ups, but since he just played it off as if he was just one of the regular people and he was able to escape, they would have never known that the leader of the Pink Panthers was in their possession. April of 2010, a writer of the New Yorker by the name of David Samuels actually did a really good article about the Pink Panthers. David Samuels was able to meet with two alleged Pink Panther members who went by the names Eugene and Boris. Eugene then explained that most of the Pink Panthers are most of the time substance abusers. Also explained that most of them have wives and children as well. He then clarifies that there is no big brain to the Pink Panthers. All of them purely just think together as if they were one brain. Eugene would also go on to say, quote, "They hate everybody. They hate Germany, the Vaseline, the USA, their own governments. You get a call from a guy, you meet 10 other guys, and you get paid. Some are cousins, some are good friends. All of them will be in prison in the next 5 or 10 years. And the writer of this article, David Samuels, also says in his article, quote, "Over the past year, I spoke with 17 detectives in 10 countries who are tracking the Panthers. Nearly all the detectives told me that the final destination of the loot remains unknown. But they are an organization that still operate to this day. In 2018 alone, the Pink Panthers had said to stole from Christie's exhibition in Venice, treasures from a Swedish cathedral, a tiara from a British manor house, and altogether that was worth $2.3 million. So $2.3 million all in the year of 2018. Even this year, even to this day, in July of 2022, 3 men from Italy were arrested after robbing a jewelry store in the typical Pink Panther way of smash and go. And these men that were also arrested were also suspected on robberies that were in Genoa, Rome, and Milan, assuming that they are workers of the Pink Panthers due to their obsession with only jewelry in European countries. And how these 3 men were caught from stealing from this jewelry store, an officer and his partner followed 2 of the suspected 3 men and they watched them go into a building. They came out of that building several hours later, and when the police stopped them and searched them, they searched their apartment that they had upstairs as well, and in that apartment, that is when the 3rd guy that was found in the surveillance footage was also found. The police described the apartment to be something out of a movie scene. They said that they had everything in place to stage another robbery, such as fake guns with blanks, tools to calculate the thickness of the display glass in certain jewelry stores, and they also had a map of the city to calculate the nearest police station as well as their getaway car and how far they needed to go. And investigators said that the 3rd member that they found in the apartment building actually had an international arrest warrant for murder and illegally possessing weapons and explosives. Even to this day, the Pink Panthers are still very much in business as of July of 2022. What was that, like 3 months ago? Yeah, that is the end of today's video. We talked about some very interesting heists today, some robberies. We talked about the bank collar robbery, and if you guys believed, was it Brian? Was Brian involved? Was he a victim? Was he in on it? Did he think the bomb was fake? Do you think it was mostly Marjorie and Kenneth? And then we also talked about the Pink Panthers, who creates the most insane heist ever and somehow get away with it most of the time. As I said, even to this day, none of that jewelry is recovered. So no one knows truly where that jewelry is. They don't know if they deconstruct the jewelry in order to sell off like diamonds and stuff like that for profit, because I don't know how you could sell illegal jewelry to someone. I don't know how that works. Like, how would you get the money to buy illegal jewelry if you can't show it off? That is today's video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you want want to follow me on any of my socials, like my Instagram, that will be linked down below, as well as my PO box if you want to send me anything, and as well all of the makeup that I put on my face. So if you're like, Hailey, what is that shadow? What is that lip? What do? That will all be linked down below. I don't even know if this shows up on camera. Sometimes I do very vibrant looks in real life, and then I look at it on camera and I'm like, sis, you can barely see anything. I remember last video I was saying that I was reading A Girl's Guide to Murder, that book. I stopped reading it just because it didn't really interest me. Maybe it was the way that it was set up. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, but it's set up in a really weird way where it kind of changes like her written essay to her perspective very often, to the point where I was like, I can't really understand this. So instead, I decided to go for something a little bit more different. It's called 3 Pound Universe. I haven't even started reading it, but I started reading it. I got this from like a vintage bookshop, and I think the owner of the book is in here. It says Esther, I got your book, honey. Sorry about it. I got it for $4.98, and it basically just discusses the brain and everything about the brain. And this is something that I've always been interested in because, fun fact, prior to YouTube, I wanted to go into the medical field for this, to be some sort of neuro doctor, neurosurgeon. I really wanted to do that. So I haven't read one of these books since high school, so I felt like, you know, I should start reading them again. Open up an old interest of mine. So that is all for me because I am blabbering like I typically do. We'll see you guys on Monday. So yes, I love you, I love you, I love you, and do something that makes you happy today.